Welcome to the channel. We hope you enjoy this video. Let's get started. The morning sun slipped through the kitchen blinds, casting stripes of light across the counter. I stood there, waiting for my coffee to brew, the steam rising in small clouds as I poured a little cream. I noticed how my wedding ring caught the light while I stirred, and for a moment, I took in the quiet stillness of the early morning. There was something about that silence that felt a bit different these days, not as comfortable, maybe even a little heavy. I glanced over at the clock. It read 7:15 a.m. After 10 years together, I knew the rhythm of our mornings by heart. Soon, Clara would be awake, moving around with the nervous energy she'd been carrying for months now. Almost like clockwork, I heard her soft footsteps upstairs, then the creak of our bedroom door. But recently, our routine had shifted, and I could feel it. Small things kept nagging at me, like a splinter you can't quite pull out. Clara's showers were taking longer, she was more focused on her makeup, and she put extra effort into picking her outfits, something she hadn't done in years. With my coffee in hand, I sat down at the breakfast nook, flipping open my laptop to check emails. My job at the architecture firm was demanding, with a big project due soon, but my mind drifted away from blueprints and back to my home life. Then I heard her heels click against the hardwood floor as she came down the stairs. She walked in, dressed sharply in a navy skirt and cream blouse, her dark hair carefully styled in waves that reminded me of our old date nights, back when we used to have those. "Morning," I said, hoping she'd look at me. But she just muttered, "Morning," her eyes locked on her phone, typing quickly with a slight smile on her lips, one I hadn't seen in a long time. "Want breakfast?" "I could make eggs," I offered, remembering weekends when we used to cook together, sipping coffee and sharing the paper. She grabbed a travel mug and said, "No time. Big presentation today. The Johnson account needs final tweaks before the meeting." I nodded, noticing how she still hadn't looked at me. "Another late night, then?" "Probably," she said, switching her coffee out for green tea. "Something she'd started doing a few weeks ago for her skin," she said. "Don't wait up for dinner. I'll grab something at work." "I could bring you lunch," I tried. "That new Thai place open near your office." She finally looked up, but her gaze quickly shifted away. "That's sweet, but I have a working lunch with the team. Maybe some other time." Before I could reply, her phone buzzed, and she smiled. A smile that hit me like a punch. She turned slightly, angling the screen out of my view. "I should go," she said, hurrying to grab her purse. She checked her reflection in the hall mirror, reapplying lipstick I'd given her last Christmas. "Have a good day," she tossed back, and the door clicked shut behind her, leaving the house quiet and empty. I sat there, my coffee growing cold, trying to pinpoint when everything had changed. It hadn't been sudden, more like a slow drift. There were little signs in hindsight I should have caught. The new password on her phone, closed with the tags removed before I'd seen them, calls taken in a low voice in another room. Alone, each thing seemed minor, but together, they painted a picture I couldn't ignore. At work, I couldn't focus. The blueprints blurred as my mind replayed the morning. My friend and coworker, Kyle, waved his hand in front of my face. "Earth to Wyatt. You've been staring at that same spot for 20 minutes. Everything okay?" I shook myself back. "Yeah, just thinking about the support beam placement." Kyle gave me a knowing look. "Sure it's not something else? You've been pretty quiet lately." "It's nothing." I started stacking the papers on my desk, trying to organize my thoughts. "Just some stuff at home." Kyle nodded, backing off. "Well, I'm here if you need to talk." I appreciated the offer, but I wasn't ready to put words to my suspicions yet. Saying them out loud would make them real. I needed more proof. The day dragged, and by 6 o'clock, I'd thrown myself into work enough to make progress on the project. On the drive home, I decided to make dinner anyway, even if Clara came home late. Cooking had always been something we enjoyed together. I stopped by the store, picked up what I needed for chicken marsala, and got to work in the kitchen. Just as I pulled the chicken out of the oven, I heard her key turn in the lock. She was home earlier than expected, her face flushed and hair slightly messy in a way that could have been from the wind or something else. "Something smells great," she said, setting her purse down but keeping it close. "Thought we could eat together for a change." I replied casually, setting the plates on the table. How was the presentation? It went well, she answered, brushing her hair back, a nervous gesture I knew all too well. The client loved the concept. Great. Work can wait, I said, pouring her a glass of wine. When's the last time we had dinner together? She looked a bit guilty and set her phone aside, joining me at the table, but we ate mostly in silence, her eyes flicking back to her phone every now and then, her leg bouncing under the table. How's the Johnson account really going? I asked, breaking the silence. Oh, yeah, the client is super picky, she replied. Her phone buzzed just then, screen up, and I caught a glimpse of a message that turned my stomach. The words burned into my mind. Can't wait to put my hands on you again. I barely managed to keep my voice steady. Everything okay? Just work stuff, she mumbled, tucking her phone away quickly. But I could tell by the tremble in her fingers and the way her face lost its color that she was hiding something. A guy I didn't recognize was holding the door for Clara when she walked in, and the way they acted around each other was too familiar and way too comfortable. Over the next few days, I pieced together more of the puzzle. I noticed how Clara always took her phone to the bathroom and never left it unattended. But she grew careless, leaving small openings in her security. One afternoon, while she was in the shower, I took the chance to grab her phone. My hand trembled a bit as I opened her email, grateful she hadn't thought to change the password. What I discovered shocked me. There were conversations between Clara and a guy named Grant Thompson. The emails were filled with flirtations and references to meetings that never showed on her work calendar. I quickly did a LinkedIn search and found Grant's profile. He looked to be in his early 30s with perfectly styled dark hair, like something out of a magazine. His profile claimed he was a senior account manager at Clara's firm, and the recommendations praised his charm and ability to connect with clients. Each new detail felt like another knife stabbing me in the back. Despite everything, I kept my cool at dinner. I asked Clara about her day, pretending to listen as she spun stories about meetings and deadlines. I noticed her checking her phone under the table, and I saw the slight smile that formed on her face at whatever message came through. The confirmation came unexpectedly. I had stopped for coffee near Clara's office, genuinely in the area for a client meeting, when I overheard two women chatting at the next table. Did you see them at the holiday party? One asked, not quiet enough. The way Grant was following Clara around like a puppy, he's always been a player. Her friend replied, remember Jessica from accounting? Same story, different year. But I have to say, he usually goes for the single ones. I tightened my grip around my coffee cup, feeling the cardboard crumple under my fingers. I forced myself to stay calm and breathe slowly as the women continued gossiping. Well, you know what they say about the quiet ones, the first woman said. She always seems so straight-laced, but I guess Grant brings out people's wild side. Did you see them at Murphy's last week? I was there with Tom from IT, and they were in the back booth, definitely not discussing the Johnson account, if you catch my drift. I stood up suddenly, leaving my half-finished coffee on the table. The cool air outside helped clear my head, but those women's words echoed in my mind. That evening, as I watched Clara get ready for another late meeting, I felt something inside me shift fundamentally. The initial shock and pain had transformed into something harder, colder. I studied her closely as she applied fresh lipstick and smoothed her skirt in the hallway mirror. Don't wait up, she called over her shoulder. The words felt too familiar, losing all meaning. Lots to review for the Johnson account, of course, I replied, my voice carefully neutral. Good luck with the review. The door closed behind her, and I walked to the window, watching her drive away. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner before grabbing my keys. Tonight, I decided, I would find out exactly what kind of review she was conducting. It was surprisingly easy to follow her. She drove to a small Italian restaurant on the other side of town, far from our home and her office. I watched through the window as she greeted Grant with a kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. They sat close, sharing a bottle of wine and laughing at private jokes. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I memorized Grant's face, noting how he touched Clara's hand across the table. They seemed so comfortable together. This wasn't a first date. This was a full-blown affair. The next week blurred into a mix of surveillance and discovery. I learned their patterns, when they met, and the excuses Clara used. I watched her transform from my wife into someone entirely different, laughing and flirting in a way she hadn't with me in years. Each night, lying beside her in our bed, I refined my plan. The rage within me cooled into something more dangerous, a calculated resolve that would ensure both Clara and Grant understood the consequences of their actions. I thought about confronting them immediately, about exposing their affair to everyone, or just walking away, but none of those options satisfied the deep betrayal growing in my heart. One evening, while Clara showered, I stared at her phone on the kitchen counter. She had become careless, overly confident in her ability to keep her double life a secret. When a message notification lit up the screen, I saw it was from Grant about their next meeting. I picked up the phone, my decision firm. I wouldn't confront her just yet. I wouldn't give her the chance to make excuses or beg for forgiveness. Instead, I would gather more evidence and, when the time was right, I'd make sure both Clara and her lover understood exactly what they had destroyed. The sound of the shower kept running upstairs while I memorized Grant's number, my mind already forming a plan. I returned the phone to its place and moved to the living room window. Outside, the street was quiet and peaceful, completely at odds with the storm brewing inside me. That night in bed, I listened to Clara's breathing slow as she fell asleep. I thought about the years we had shared, the trust we built, and the future we planned. All of it felt meaningless now, shattered by her betrayal. Staring at the ceiling, my resolve hardened. I would make them pay, not with violence or loud confrontations, but with cold, calculated precision that would ensure they both understood exactly what they had lost. Tomorrow, I decided, I would begin the next phase of my plan. Let them think they were clever. Let them believe their secret was safe. Soon enough, they would learn the true cost of their actions. At exactly 8, the front door creaked open. I heard footsteps echoing confidently in the hallway, expensive shoes on hardwood floors. Grant had a taste for the finer things. From what I'd gathered, he dressed well. The footsteps paused briefly at the stairs before heading toward the living room. I flicked on the lamp. Grant froze in the doorway, one hand still raised to adjust his tie. He looked younger in person, maybe in his early 30s, with that athletic build that comes from regular gym visits. But as soon as he saw me, his confidence slipped away. Reality hit him hard. "You must be Grant," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Please come in. We need to talk about your relationship with my wife. There's been a misunderstanding." He instinctively stepped back, his eyes darting between me and the door. I slowly stood up, and my height advantage became clear. At 6'2", I towered over his smaller frame. "There's no misunderstanding," I said firmly. "Sit down." "Look, man, I don't want any trouble," he stammered. "Trouble?" I laughed without humor. "Trouble was you walking into my house, thinking you could have my wife in my bed. This isn't trouble, Grant. This is consequences." He claimed she'd told him we were having problems. I leaned closer, my voice low. "Did you not care how many married women you've pursued? The gossip suggests I'm not the first husband you've disrespected. Who told you? Jessica from accounting?" His face went pale. "Word gets around, doesn't it?" I said, my smile sharp. "Tell me, do you have a system, or do you just throw out lines until someone bites?" "This is crazy," he snapped, suddenly standing. "I'm leaving." I shot my hand out, gripping his shoulder tightly. "Not yet. First, you're going to hear exactly what kind of man you are." "Get your hands off me." He tried to break free, but I held on. I said, "Listen." I shoved him back into the chair. "You walked into my life thinking there would be no consequences." Grant tried to stand again, but I punched him, sending him sprawling across the coffee table. Blood trickled from his lip as he stared up at me, fear replacing his bravado. "I've done my research," I said, my voice steady. 3 affairs with married women in 2 years. You're not just a homewrecker, Grant. You're a predator." "You don't know anything," he spat, trying to regain some dignity. "I know everything." I showed him screenshots of texts and photos. Every meeting, every lie. "I could ruin you professionally with one email to HR." "What do you want?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I want you to understand what you're part of. You're just a convenient option who doesn't care about destroying families." I crouched down to his level. You're going to disappear from her life. No goodbyes, no explanations. You're insane, he shouted, wiping blood from his lip. I'm perfectly sane, I replied. I'm just done playing nice. I yanked him up by his collar. Do we understand each other? He nodded frantically. Yeah, I understand. It's over. I'll stay away. Good. I released him, watching as he stumbled toward the door. And Grant, if I ever see you near my wife again, this conversation gets much less civil. He fled, slamming the door behind him. I watched him run to his car, fumbling with his keys before speeding away. In the sudden silence, I surveyed the room. A few drops of blood stained the floor, and the coffee table was slightly askew. I straightened everything, erasing the evidence of our confrontation while the security cameras recorded silently. My phone buzzed, a text from Grant. I won't say anything about tonight. Just stay away from me. I smiled coldly as I deleted the message. Phase 1 was complete. At 9:15, headlights swept across the windows. I sat in my armchair, whiskey in hand, as Clara unlocked the door. She stopped short at the sight of me. Wyatt, she said, her voice high with surprise. I thought the Harrison Project. Sit down, Clara, I said quietly, my voice carrying an edge. We need to talk about Grant. The color drained from her face. Don't lie, I interrupted. Not anymore. Wyatt, please. I can explain. Explain what? The late nights, the texts while we had dinner? Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't like that. I never meant to get caught. That's the only thing you're sorry for, isn't it? That your affair got exposed? No, it's not like that, she insisted. Pack your things. I want you out of my house tonight. Where am I supposed to go? She pleaded. That's not my problem anymore, I replied coldly. You chose this, Clara. I'll tell everyone what you did to Grant, she threatened. Go ahead. I have everything recorded, Clara. She crumpled onto the couch, sobbing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No, you're not, I said quietly. You're just sorry you got caught. Pack your bags, Clara. When I come back down, I want you gone. I listened to her moving around. My phone buzzed, a text from Kyle asking if everything was okay. I ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. An hour later, I heard the front door close. I went downstairs, the house feeling different, emptier but cleaner, like lancing a wound. On the coffee table, Clara left her key and a note, but I dropped it in my pocket without reading. My phone buzzed again. Another desperate message from Clara. I blocked her number without responding and poured another whiskey. For the first time, I felt something like peace. Tomorrow, I would call my lawyer. Tonight, I would sit with my whiskey, knowing I'd handed out the consequences they earned. The doorbell rang at 9:47 a.m. I glanced at the security camera on my phone and saw Clara Pace standing on my porch. She looked awful. Her makeup was streaked from crying, and she still wore the same clothes from yesterday. Her usually neat hair was a mess. Wyatt, she shouted, pressing her forehead against the door. Please, I know you're in there. We need to talk. I didn't respond. I just watched her through the camera. I have nowhere else to go, she pleaded, her voice shaking. Grant won't take my calls. My credit cards are frozen, and I tried to get a hotel room, but... Clara, I said firmly through the door. You can't keep doing this. Her voice turned angry. I helped build this life too. Everything we have. Everything we had, I corrected her. I'll give you 5 minutes right here, but that's it. I made a horrible mistake, she said, wringing her hands. Grant didn't mean anything. It was a stupid and selfish thing to do. But we've been married for 10 years. 10 years of what? I asked her. 10 years of me working hard while you were with someone else? It wasn't like that, she shouted. Things got distant between us. Grant just made me feel good. Stop, I interrupted. I don't care why you did it. I care that you did. You lied to my face every day. We can fix this, she cried, desperation in her voice. People get over affairs all the time. We could go to counseling. You're more upset about losing your comfortable life than about losing me, I said, watching her closely. That's not true. I love you, she insisted. No, you loved what I gave you. The house, the lifestyle. How long would this have gone on if I hadn't caught you? She flinched. It wasn't 6 months. I have every receipt and hotel bill. Did you think I wouldn't notice the joint account being drained? How dare you spy on me? She yelled. How dare I? I laughed harshly. You're standing on my porch begging to come back after I caught you with your lover. People make mistakes, she shouted, stepping closer. Haven't you ever made a mistake? I met her gaze, cold and steady. Your coworker for 6 months. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. What about counseling? She asked, her voice softer now. We could work through this. There is no we anymore, Clara. I pulled out an envelope. These are divorce papers. My lawyer will contact yours. I don't have a lawyer, she cried. Your personal account is still active, but I bet you spent that on hotels and gifts for Grant. Your clothes are in garbage bags in the garage, I told her. The garage will be open until noon. After that, anything left goes to Goodwill. I have nothing, she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. You have what you chose, I replied, closing the door firmly. In the weeks that followed, I spent my time in legal meetings. Clara tried to see me again, but caused a scene at my office. A month after she signed the papers, I heard that Grant had left the company to return to Boston. Clara also changed jobs, but rumors about her continued to circulate. Months later, I ran into her at a charity event. Wyatt, she said, looking surprised. You came. We're sponsoring this event, I replied coolly. You look good. Thanks, she said, trying to smile. Can we talk? She asked. Not a chance, I said. We're done talking. As I walked away, I felt relieved. My life was finally moving in the right direction.